As many of you know, about 6 weeks ago, I traveled to South Africa. Yes, I was ambivalent about it but that's for another time. I traveled there to speak and teach at 2 different Jewish conferences. What I want to share is not about the incredible safari that I went on, because I didn't have time to do that, or even about the conferences themselves. I'll speak about that another time. What I want to share today is how my self-perception as an American Jew and as an American Jewish leader has changed. How it became clear to me while I was there and during this past year, what has been clarified for me, and I think perhaps for many of you, who we are as a congregation, who we are as people, and today I want to speak about who we can yet become. But first, back to South Africa. For a few years, I've been teaching on the faculty of a fellowship program for which the fellows are chosen from applicants who come from Jewish communities all over the world, from 6 different continents, from the United Kingdom, Australia, numerous countries throughout mainland Europe. They come from Russia and Ukraine, from Mexico, Canada, Argentina, New Zealand, Hong Kong, South Africa, Israel, and yes, even the United States. There's leadership development as well as Jewish text learning and plenty of debate among these people about the biggest issues in our world and the questions facing the Jewish people. Yes, I've loved learning about the uniquenesses of each diaspora Jewish community. In fact, if I think about it, for nearly 40 years, I've been part of many similar global Jewish projects. And for nearly 40 years, it's been, yes, I was 2 when I started doing this, it's been very clear to me how very different the American Jewish community is from every other diaspora Jewish community. That somebody wasn't 1,000% sure that all their devices were off. Anyway, just a reminder. Let me check mine. I'm waiting to hear about the new grandchild of our president. That's why she isn't here. While I'm looking at it, okay. No news yet. So anyway, I've been quite clear, or it was clear to me, I mean, it's so obvious how different the American Jewish community is from every other diaspora Jewish community. Obviously, our size, we are the largest Jewish population outside of the land of Israel, and in fact, our Jewish populations right now are about equal. We're living in a bicentric Jewish world, so of course, our size, and I will say our outsized resources, make us quantitatively different. And of course, the ways that communities, synagogues, and institutions can flourish here far exceed any other diaspora Jewish community perhaps ever in history. Like most of you, even though I'm also Israeli, I am incredibly proud to be a Jewish American and an American Jew. I'm proud of who and what we are, and I'm grateful for the ways my life, all of our lives, have been so profoundly shaped by our synagogues, our summer camps. Raise your hand if you've been to Jewish summer camp. By confirmation, by our seminaries, our programs, and countless other initiatives. At every international Jewish event that I've attended for 40 years, I've believed in, and consciously or unconsciously, I try to exemplify the best of our American Jewish exceptionalism. But over the past year, and especially while I was with other Jewish leaders from all over the world in South Africa, I've begun to feel, to sense in my bones, in my kishkas, that our American Jewish story has changed dramatically almost overnight. Over the past year, I've found myself thinking more and more that the current American Jewish experience isn't really that different. We're not really that special. Yes, for my grandparents, for my parents, for my generation, for the most part, we have felt as though we fully belong to the greatest nation on earth. Raise your hand if you have felt that way. We're not perfect, but as we increasingly live in an age where the binding trauma of the Holocaust has faded, and when the mortar that helped to maintain a certain degree of consensus among American Jews is crumbling, when we no longer actually can count on our Holocaust focus and our celebration and commitment to the incredible establishment of a sovereign Jewish democratic state, what will bind us? We are at a turning point, and we should just acknowledge that we are living through what one might call an identity crisis. One of the great things about such a rich history, however, is that there are often texts, values, ideas, and inspiration that can help us think about our current predicament and the possibilities for our future in new ways. For example, when the first century rabbinic leader Yochanan ben Zakkai realized that the age of the temple-focused Judaism in Jerusalem was over as the Romans were tightening and tightening their hold, as things became more clear to him, what did he do? He brought very unlikely people together, people that otherwise maybe didn't feel welcome in a synagogue, people who otherwise, in fact, in his case, this nephew that he never talked to and really actually didn't like. Anybody have somebody like that in their family? He reached out to those people and he brought them together to brainstorm, to think together out of the box about what they should do next. He knew that they needed to find a new way. So what now should be our new way? What will be our more positive ground for meaning and identity than the events of the last year? Of course, we didn't change overnight. Many of the changes in our American Jewish experience that made themselves apparent after October 7th were not directly the result of October 7th and its aftermath. More significant changes have been taking place for American Jews for a number of years. In his very recently published and highly acclaimed new book entitled Tablets Shattered: The End of an American Jewish Century and the Future of Jewish Life, Joshua Leifer offers important insights about why and how things have changed so dramatically. I think that many of you will be interested in reading or listening to this book because it describes so well the incredible, incredible experience that so many of us have had growing up in this country. But what's more important for us today is how he describes the 4 paths forward for the future. As Rabbi Herman reminded us, we can talk a lot about the last 183 years of our congregation, but what matters most is what we're going to do tomorrow. Leifer offers, or he names these 4 paths forward that we should just acknowledge, and we can study them together during the course of the year, and you can figure out where we are in them if you want, and I'm interested in talking about this together. He says, one way forward is just to hang on to the dying establishment Jewish community, or what my colleague, Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove of Park Avenue Synagogue in New York calls the OJC, the Organized Jewish Community. We've been panicked for years about its decline, and we've been obsessing about its continuity. But he says, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the first century, perhaps that's just over. Perhaps we just need to do something different. The second way forward is what he calls prophetic protest. Those are many of the folks in the generation of millennials and Gen Z who are out there protesting. They are sure that all our prophetic texts have to be true in the streets and in politics. God bless them. Then there's what he calls neo-reform, the third category. Neo-reform. Neo-reform is this hugely open tent reform Judaism, which is amazing. Isn't it amazing? But he says it too has its problems, because if we're just so open about everything and anything and everyone, we have no community, really. We might as well be Unitarian. I just want to say their services are much shorter. I know, because on Nantucket, where I was the rabbi for about 15 years, seasonally on Nantucket, it was a difficult post, but somebody had to do it. We actually shared the space with actually one of the earliest Unitarian churches in the New World. What a great place America has been for all of us. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, neo-reform cannot become Unitarianism or just a general humanism with a few Jewish words thrown in. That's his critique of that category. Don't worry, I'm not suggesting we are that or should be that. And then, of course, as you know, and as we see all around us in Pikesville, there's also the fourth category, which he calls separatist orthodoxy, right? Living separate, primarily. Defiant of all the cultural changes. God bless them. So what are these categories? The dying establishment, the prophetic protest, neo-reform, and separatist orthodoxy. And as you can imagine, there's much to be said about each one of them and the way that he chooses, which I disagree with. As you can imagine, though, what's important for us today is to consider what Har Sinai Oheb Shalom can glean from this moment, from our past, in order to create our future. The impact of October 7th, of course, has led to incredible things as well. Huge ingatherings of Jewish people, so much so that I found myself on several occasions in huge Jewish events, and somebody often turns to me and says, "Where did all these Jews come from? Where did it happen that so many of our young people are now wearing proudly, outwardly Jewish stars, the Magen David and other Jewish symbols?" Raise your hand if perhaps you are or know one of those people. We've been wearing so many symbols. There's been a documented increase in Jewish engagement this year. Something is changing. Now, of course, this is not a silver lining, because we would give anything for some of the reasons that may be causing that to not have happened. We don't want Jewish identity. We don't want Jews to have their identity to be defined by way of the hatred of others. We want to have a positive expression of what it means to be Jewish today. Yes, I love seeing the increase, and yes, there's increased membership. In 1 month, we had 15 new households join us, and yes, there's an increase in people who want to convert to Judaism. Documented all over the world, and especially in America. I love seeing it. Love all these outward signs and signals of Jewish identity. But as Rabbi Cosgrove writes, I'm ultimately less interested in the necklace or the pin than I am in what substantive and sustained engagement with Jewish life is going to be in the future. Yes, in addition to the opportunities that you'll have to buy Israel bonds and other opportunities that are just being announced to support Israel and Israelis through a new campaign with the Associated and a whole bunch of our synagogues, we've joined together to help ensure that the people of Ashkelon will be able to attend to their urgent and enormous mental health needs. But in the broader great scheme of things, what we want is for our engagement and our reawakening of Jewish identity to continue. Will these acts lead to that? What is needed now that can take into account our mixed politics about Israel and about America, especially at this moment? What you'll love about the book, Tablets Shattered, is that it inspires us. And I want to inspire us today to think about what we want to be as a congregation. Who do we want to be? I want to suggest that perhaps, not perhaps, we have the possibility not of fitting into some box or category. And of course, we're not going to leave behind any of what makes us great Reform Jews, our egalitarianism and our embrace of scholarship and science and spirituality and new music. But perhaps, really, this is the time to say, what is it that makes us unique? How can we be the place that everybody wants to partner with because we're just so great to work with? What if we're the place that people point to from all over the region and the country as the place where something positive and great and, yes, open but with clear boundaries is happening? What if this is the place that you want to come to more often because of how it makes you feel? Today, before you go, or maybe later today at Tashlich, 5 o'clock, Meadowood Park, with your pets and a picnic. Raise your hand if you're planning to be there. Is anybody listening to me? Raise your hand if you're planning to be there at 5 o'clock for the Tashlich with your pets and a picnic. Or perhaps next Sunday, this Sunday, October 6th, you can come to Run for Their Lives at 9 a.m. There's also a rally later in the day. You can come to our cemetery services. Or perhaps on October 7th, on Monday. October 7th is Monday. You could come here just for a few minutes at 12:10. At 12:10 to be part of what is going to be a worldwide moment of silence. 12:10 on Monday, it's going to be simultaneous with a similar moment in Tel Aviv and in Jewish communities around the world. Just take a half hour off from whatever else is going on, if at all possible, and come here to be together for just a moment. Find somebody in the congregation and invite them to coffee so that you can get to know them. Anybody, just anybody you happen to bump into in the ladies' room or the men's room or while you're in, did I mention Perkite's Cafe? Just say, I'm gonna have coffee with you. Somebody you've never spoken with. I'm inspired to encourage us to do this because of Yanai Kaminka. Yanai Kaminka, Lieutenant Yanai Kaminka, was murdered on October 7th while defending his base for hours, almost single-handedly, waiting for the waiting for the other units to show up, to get a communication. He never did. He never knew what happened. His family, our dear friends, Alana and Eyal, wow, are they strong and courageous people. At his funeral a year ago, they had to take cover because of incoming missiles. And they just gathered at the grave a couple days ago to mark that end of the 11th month, almost 12 months. And again, there were missiles not coming from Gaza, but coming from Lebanon and Yemen. But Yanai, whose favorite phrase was, Rak belayla ro'im kochavim, only at night you can see stars. He was famous, or he was well known among all those who know him. And it turned out his parents had no idea how many soldiers' lives he had touched, because you know what he did? He wanted to make sure he knew every single one of them in their entirety, in their complexity. He would give up very few hours of sleep that he had in order to just have a cup of coffee with them. In the army, they drink this Turkish coffee. He would sit with them with a cup of coffee and just ask them, who are they? What's going on in their lives? He said something that's hard to translate. He would say he believed that when you look at a person, when you just look at them, you see what you expect to see. Shetzofim ba'adam hu niyeh tzafui. When you look at a person on the outside, they look like what you just expect them to be. We make so many assumptions about people just by looking at them. But he believed that when you see a person, when you truly see them because you've had a cup of coffee or tea or a glass of wine or seltzer together, that person becomes ra'ui. They become worthy to you. They become someone who you care about, who you feel responsible for. Anyway, his parents kept telling this story, and all the soldiers whose lives he touched kept telling this story throughout the last year. And so the biggest coffee company in Israel, Elite, asked the family if they could partner with them to share Yanai's story. And so they gave out for free this little pamphlet about Yanai with 2 cups of coffee. Okay, I admitted I was trying to have that coffee company give us thousands of these for the high holidays to give to all of you, but it was too complicated. But we're not soldiers. We can just buy each other a cup of coffee or tea, don't you think? Raise your hand if you're willing to try to do this year. I think if we do this, if we take it seriously, and if we really think about who we can become and who we want to become, then the next year will look quite different when we gather here. On Yom Kippur, our president, Abby Hoffman, will be asking us all to think about what we can give of our resources, of our time, of our energy, our most precious resource being our time and our openness of heart. But I will ask us also to think about another resource, which is your social capital. If each one of you today, in the next few hours or days or weeks, gets on social media, despite what I said about social media last night, if you missed it, by the way, you can watch the whole service on Facebook. Just saying. But what if you used your social capital and went on social media and just said a few words about how you feel about this day, about being here, about why you need community, what if you invited somebody to join you? If you do that, then perhaps we will become the congregation that we need to be. I invite you to join us in imagining and helping us plan together our future. Bring your unique perspective and your needs and your skills and your talents so that in 10 years from now, we'll be the place that the next generation needs. How great our future will be if we can count on all of you and your time and your hearts and your minds and your spiritual and intellectual thirst. How great the next phase will be. We'll celebrate our 5 years since we've officially merged and created this new entity. We'll celebrate it on November 22nd. Mark your calendars. Come. Let us defy all the sociological predictions about the future of American Jewish life, that ever-dying-ism, that decline-ism, all those false choices that this book might suggest to us. Let's embrace where we are. Let's become broader and not narrowed by the political and ideological narrow-mindedness that others want to force us into. Let's not buy into false limitations. Let's build a future together that is more worthy of our past, more than worthy of our past, one that is worthy of the future. The process won't be easy, but sometimes it'll be incredibly joyful. We'll have to get out of our heads and think like Yochanan ben Zakkai about new possibilities. I assure you, though, if you truly engage with us together, it will be to you and to all of us a source of joy, a source of comfort, a source of meaning. And in this way, may we all be blessed with a future that is sweet and good and capable. A future that our children will rejoice in and our grandchildren will be so proud of. And then we may sit toward the end of our days and say, what are they doing? What is this new music? Who is that on the bima? But it will be so true and so good that we will all rejoice together. Shana Tova.